Jackie Blankenship, Jackie, last name Blankenship, Blankenship.
And how would you say most people in West Michigan know you?
From the radio station or being on the news. I've been in radio and television for, oh God, at this point 12, 13 years.
What do you want people to know about you now, who you are now?
I want people to know that I'm a mom, that I have an awesome husband, and that there's more to Jackie Green, who they know me as, than what they used to hear or see on the news, and know my intersex story. So I turned 40 back in May, which was like, I don't know. I would say I had a small midlife crisis. I went, oh my God, I'm 40. And I suddenly realized I have held a lot of myself here that I was uncomfortable talking about. And I felt this need to talk to somebody. And I had done talk therapy before, which I truly believe can make a big difference in a lot of people's lives, but it was just not enough. Because my whole life, I was told by people in the medical profession, from family, from friends, that this intersex condition I had should be kept a secret. And it was something that I always tentatively talked about as I got older. So when I got comfortable talking about it, I would tell people, but I still had that fear in the back of my head. What are they gonna think? What are they gonna think if they find out I have XY chromosomes? Even though most people don't even know what their chromosomes are. Like, I asked my husband the other day, what are your chromosomes? And he looked at me and he said, I don't know, ABC? People don't really know because you can't see it. But it was something that worried me constantly, especially the great debate about gender that we see people have every single day. So I turned 40 and I realized I don't really care what John Smith in his kitchen thinks about me and my body anymore. And frankly, if one kid with the condition I have, which is complete androgen insensitivity syndrome, or any of the 40 plus intersex conditions you can be born with, sees a video of me or hears me talking about, yeah, my biological makeup is a little different, and feels seen, then I feel pretty cool about that.
How has been the reception to that since you started talking out about it?
I opened up about it, I would say, 2017. I wrote an article for West Michigan Woman magazine because years prior I was at Art Prize doing a story about a piece that had gotten vandalized. And it was actually a human rights piece, a gay pride piece. And on that piece, people were invited to write something about themselves. And while I was doing the story, I saw at the very bottom in small print, I am intersex and I am here. At that point, I had never heard that word before, but I think that applies to my condition. So I could not stop thinking about it. And I went back to my house and I Googled intersex. It wasn't a term I'd even heard before because it wasn't a mainstream term. And immediately popped up complete androgen insensitivity syndrome, which is what I have. And for those that don't understand what that is, basically I have XY chromosomes, which you typically see in males, but I developed externally female because my body can't respond to testosterone. So I had XY chromosomes, but when testosterone washed over me, my body's like, I can't use that. So my testes, which were in my abdomen, because I was in the womb, started saying, what can I do with this testosterone? Well, I used aromatization, it's called, and it converted it into a usable source, which for me was estrogen. So I developed externally female, but internally I still had those testes, and I never developed a uterus or ovaries or fallopian tubes, and I did have XY chromosomes. Now, because of my lack of response to testosterone, I don't grow body hair. There's a few other things that go along with it, but at the end of the day, it just makes me different. I don't have a period. I don't develop the same way that our typical females do. So I discovered the word intersex, and I felt very like, oh my gosh, I'm intersex. That's what I am. And I had never really heard that term before. So I wrote a piece for West Michigan Woman called I'm Intersex and I'm Here Too. And I was basically responding to this stranger who had written that on that piece. And I never found that person, but I immediately was flooded with people online saying, oh my gosh, I didn't know this about you. I've known you my whole life, I didn't know this about you. Well, it's because I was told by everyone that people wouldn't accept that they'd think less of me, or they wouldn't think of me as a woman or girl anymore. So I kept it to myself. After writing that piece, the flood of the response overwhelmed me, and I immediately was like, I don't know if I like this attention. I don't know if I'm ready to be that person that I felt like some of that community wanted. So I kind of went back and took a step back and said, okay, I did the thing, I came out about it, doesn't mean it needs to be my whole personality. So when I turned 40 and I realized I'm still harboring a lot about keeping the secret and not even understanding the scope of my body. I was asked at a doctor not that long ago if I had a cervix, and I had to Google it. I didn't know. How is it possible that as a 40-year-old woman, I don't know if I have a cervix? That's crazy. It's 2025. I should know these things. But that's because my condition is very rare, and on top of that, it's not talked about. So I decided to go on TikTok, actually, and tell my story. And I did that. I woke up the next day, just opened the app, and I had 500,000 views on the one video, and I went from 2,000 followers to almost 50,000. I was blown away, so I thought, well, maybe this is my space where I'm going to get my message out. So I just started doing videos about being intersex, what that means for me, how it's affected my life, how does it affect my intimacy, how did it affect me hormonally and growing up, and each video got more views than the last, and I've made a whole community of other intersex individuals online.
That's amazing. You know, I think you were talking about that art prize piece, and we first learned the word intersex. How old were you at that time?
I was probably 28.
So what was it like to kind of learn something new about yourself as a full-grown adult?
So at that point, I had always been told the term DSD, which when I was young in like 2000, when I had my internal testes removed, that stood for disorder of sexual development. It now goes by difference in sexual development because it's not a disorder. I develop fine on my own. So I had only heard the term DSD, and I'd only really known difference in sexual development. And I had obviously heard the slur hermaphrodite, which for those that don't know, that's not a biological term for humans, but it is something that's often used to make us look less than. So I had never heard intersex. And when I saw it, something about it made me think, that, why don't I know what that means? And when I Googled it, I just knew, I think that refers to conditions like mine. And when I saw that that is now an umbrella term to cover the over 40 conditions a child can be born with, it was just like fireworks went off in my brain. Like, there's a word for it. I'm not crazy. So my mom is a carrier of whatever causes me to have this condition. I don't fully understand what that all means, if I'm being honest, and even a Google search, even talking to doctors, it doesn't totally make sense, and I think it's because the medical community doesn't know. Backing up, intersex people can be born with no living relative or relative they know of that has it. You could just have it. It's just a way to be. But then again, it can also run in families like it does in mine. So my mom had a few relatives that had this condition, and she was told she could be a carrier, she might have a child that has it, so she thought to ask. So when I was about 4 years old, she told my pediatrician, hey, my daughter might have a condition. I don't know much about it. I just have relatives that have it, so they told me she should get a blood test. So at 4 years old, it was 1989, they did a blood test, and the blood test came back that I was biologically male, which was quite a shock, especially in the 80s, being that I looked like a little girl. I was a little girl, but I had a Y chromosome. So that's how they figured out I had this condition, and they immediately had me start going to University of Michigan Health up in Ann Arbor to see a specialist out there. That doctor informed my parents that they wanted me to keep these testes till I hit puberty, and at 15, we would talk about the removal process.
What were you told? I know you mentioned this a little bit too, about talking about what was happening to you.
My parents were stuck in a really uncomfortable situation because my mom's family was diagnosed in like the 70s at a time where this was really a lot of unknown, and a lot of ignorant things were said to them by people they cared about, and it left my mom and dad feeling very afraid because they knew who I was, what I was, and that everything was fine, but I think they were afraid for me to go out and talk about it and have people's reaction be negative toward their baby. I was their firstborn. So they told me when I was probably 8 or 9 years old that I had a condition and I would never be able to have children someday. And that when I was older, I would end up needing an operation. But we kind of left it at that, and they'd ask me consistently if I had any questions. And I had a lot of questions, but I wasn't really comfortable asking, and I didn't understand. I just knew I would be like some of my family members who I knew had to adopt or didn't have children. that was early 90s. I distinctly remember sitting on the couch watching a rerun of Full House when my mom and dad came in and shut the TV off, and I was like, what the? I'm watching Stephanie Tanner. How rude. And they said, we want to talk to you. So it wasn't till I hit my teen years that they sat me down and said, okay, so we're getting closer to where we're going to need to have that operation we've talked about. We're going to go up to the University of Michigan and take a look at this. I remember having an ultrasound, and at the time, the doctor only would refer to my internal testes as gonads, which is another term for that. But no one told me that gonads means internal testes. So I'd ask, what is that? Like, what is a gonad? And I think at the time, the doctors were under the impression that it would help me have better gender identity. I don't know. It was 1999, I want to say, 2000. And they told me, well, it's pretty much an ovary because it's producing your estrogen. Which I guess is half true, but it wasn't. The reality was they were undescended testes in my abdomen. So I think I knew that that wasn't true in my mind, but I wanted so desperately to feel like everyone else at a time where I was awkward and going through puberty and I didn't want to be different that I just ran with it. Oh, okay. I'm having ovaries removed. That's what I'm having done. So we did an ultrasound to find them and then had them removed over Christmas break of my 9th freshman year of high school. I think the biggest thing that affected me immediately at that time was I had the surgery and I remember they were attempting to go laparoscopic through my belly button. But the doctor told me it was new at that time for this particular procedure to do that. So she was gonna try it, and if it didn't work, she'd have to do a full-blown surgery, and that would be more recovery. So I woke up and they did need to do a full-blown surgery, and I had a scar, across my lower abdomen like you would if you had a hysterectomy or a C-section. I was in a lot of pain. And I remember her handing me an orange bottle of medication. And I was on a bunch of medication for painkillers, and then she said, now this one is special. This one you need to take the rest of your life. And I said, why? And she said, well, we just took your gonads. Now those gonads were producing your estrogen, and estrogen is what helps your bones. It's what helps you grow. It's what you need, your body needs to be a functioning female. And I was like, okay, well, then why'd you take them? Because no one really explained to me why they took them. It wasn't really in my control. No one said, do you understand why we're doing this, and are you okay with it? It was just, we're doing this. So I then went on hormone replacement therapy, and I was placed on that from 15 till now. I think that was the biggest thing that affected me the most because my body went into menopause at 15. And I didn't understand what menopause was because I was 15. So I did not take that medication as religiously as I was supposed to. I took it maybe twice a week because I would wake up and be like, let's say summer hit and I was gonna go swimming with my friends. I'd wake up and I'd be like, peace! And I'd go out and join the neighborhood kids. I wouldn't remember and no one was telling me to. So I'd pop that once a week. Well, when you're going through menopause and you lose, I had not just slow burn lost my estrogen supply. I had mine completely removed. So it was like a very sudden, all those hormones are gone. So I basically was doing myself a disservice by not taking it every day. And instead I had a lot of symptoms that a menopausal woman had. I had sore breasts. I had hot flashes all the time. Constantly got horrible night sweats. I'd wake up soaking wet, but I didn't know why. I just thought that was my life and that was something I had to deal with. Well, the biggest thing that I walked away from was a part of my condition is being born with a shortened vaginal canal. I think a common misconception about human anatomy is that your vagina is actually the inside, not the exterior genitalia. So I grew up externally female, right? But I did not have that internal canal. So essentially, I was born without a vagina, but I didn't know it. I wasn't told that till I hit adulthood at 18. I went back to that doctor for my first, what was essentially a gynecologist appointment, but they had told my parents and myself that you can't go to just any gynecologist because, for obvious reasons. So I drove back to Ann Arbor and went to that doctor to be informed, hey, just so you know, you don't have a vagina. It was the biggest shock of my life, and I only remember half of what they said. they handed me a brown paper bag of dilators and said, how we treat this is dilation therapy, and you can go home and do that, and that's something you have to do every day if you want to have a partner that's male. I remember having a lot of questions and being super uncomfortable and like shocked and afraid. And the biggest takeaway I got, and the biggest thing that bothers me to this day, is I asked, what will happen if I don't do this? And they said, well, nothing will happen. You just won't have that part. And I said, okay, well, what happens if I do it? And they said, well, no one will ever know. It'll all be the same. I said, how do you know? Because no one with my condition has ever not had it. So how do we know if it's the same? And the doctor looked at me and said, oh, I meant it's the same for your partner. So the takeaway was I had to go home and do this for my partner, that I don't even have a theoretical partner, because no one can tell you if this is the same for you, because there's no way to know that. That was something that haunted me from when I was at the end of my junior year of high school. I mean, it does to this day, if I'm being honest. I would go see that specific doctor because it was the only one that specialized in my condition, probably once every year, once every other year, just for a basic checkup. And every time, while they didn't tell me not to tell anybody, they would use, in my opinion, triggering language that told me not to tell anybody. I was a collegiate athlete. I ran cross country and track at Ferris State University. Go Bulldogs! And obviously, I don't produce testosterone, which is a big part of what we look for in women who might be doping or make them unusually strong or fast, correct? So obviously, there'd be nothing to worry about with me in a women's sport. But I remember telling the doctor excitedly, like, hey, they gave me a scholarship because I ran so well my freshman year that I'm on a scholarship now for an NCAA team. And I remember she said, that's amazing. Do they know about your condition? And I said, no. And she said, if I were you, I wouldn't tell them, just to be safe. And I said, okay. And I remember thinking, why can't they know? But it scared me, and I thought, oh, better not tell them. And now I know it's because of how we treat intersex individuals in athletics. Granted, my condition specifically doesn't give me any kind of athletic advantage, but historically, we mistreat intersex athletes, and that's just fact, and we can see it all over social media and the internet. And I think that was her way of looking out for me, but at the same time, it really gave me a phobia about people knowing. You know, on top of that, they consistently would ask me after doing a checkup or asking how dilation was going, if I had a partner, or if I had a boyfriend. And if I told them I did, they'd always immediately say, do they know? And I'd say, I mean, yeah, they know most of it. They know I can't have kids. They know, they know a lot of it. Do they know everything? And then I'd be like, I don't know if they know everything, because I don't think I know everything. I'm very confused, and I don't understand why you keep asking me who knows what they know. And it led me to think, well, if you have to ask me every time what someone knows and what someone doesn't know, I shouldn't tell people. That was the big takeaway. So it wasn't until I met my husband that I really got more vocal about it. We met in college working at a restaurant, and at that point, I was almost like afraid of dating because of everything that had been going on up till that point. So I would casually date and never take it past very superficial, going out and then saying peace at the door. So I was very upfront with him. We started off just as friends, and I told him from the get-go, I can't have children. I was born with this condition that's very rare, and I told him and all of my friends pretty much what it was. And so by the time we were dating and engaged, he knew all the details about it, and I felt very safe with him.
How is all that messaging, keep things secret, you have confusing, unknown things about your own body, how has that changed kind of your view of your body and yourself throughout your life?
I think at the time when I was young, considering all of this and all this messaging, I really was very, what's the word I'm looking for, balanced. I had a lot of friends. I had a good life, and I like to remind people of that, especially in my videos, because sometimes it sounds like, wow, I had this traumatic, horrible life. If you could interview kids that grew up with me, I had a really good life. I mean, I was on Winterfest court, at my high school. I was on varsity cross country and track. I had a lot of friends. I went to prom. I was on a college scholarship, like I talked about. I was in a sorority. I had a very good, normal female experience. But that secret sat in the back of my brain, and I think I would block it out, and I really didn't deal with it till I was in my mid-20s. And once I started dealing with it, things got hard. So at the time as things were happening, I think it was very like, no big deal. But once I was like 25, 26, 27, and I started examining myself, what did it mean to be a woman? What do chromosomes even mean? That I started like spiraling. And I would say even right now, talking to you, I still tend to spiral. So the human body can do like insane things. And it's something that I think a lot of people overlook about themselves. I mean, your body is capable of so much more than you think it is. And even the human spirit in general is. I grew up from 8 years old, you will not have children. You will not have children. Well, I got married, and the first thing that happened was my sisters came up to me on my wedding day and said, if we can find a way, I will carry a baby for you. So we went to the fertility center and we found a way, and I have a daughter. We never thought I would have that. And had I crumpled at the thought and just accepted it that I won't have children, or there's only one way for me to have a child, then I wouldn't have my daughter, who is like the best part of my life outside of my husband and, my family. So I think running and training and realizing all the things I can do really has helped me over the years. I know I had a hip surgery in 2022. I had a labrum repair, and I fell into this deep depression of I'll never run again. My life is over. Running was my identity. I'll never do that again. And when I started finally going, okay, you're recovered. You don't need to wallow in self-pity. I started running again, and I'd gained a ton of weight, and I was super slow. I mean, for me, and I was running awful. And I would tell everybody, well, I know my Boston days are done. I decided to start running again, like hard this past year, and I thought, why not? Let's just run a marathon. I qualified for Boston by 10 minutes out of sheer will. I just went, what am I doing? I can do hard things. So I think that my body proving me wrong has been the best part of my experience with being intersex, is understanding that I can do more than I've been told I can do, and I can do more than even I think I can. It's funny, when it started and we found out my sister was indeed pregnant with our child, I immediately thought, I hope it's a boy. Because I was deathly afraid of all the things that girls go through that I wouldn't be able to relate to, and I immediately felt less than. I thought, I will not be a good mom because I don't know how to talk about this. So we found out it was a girl, and I was like, oh no, what am I gonna do? And I talked about it all the time to my mom, to my husband. What will I do? How will I talk to her about these things I don't understand? And she's like, you'll figure it out. Everyone does. So I think I've made a very good point. She's 9 years old now, and we talk about things openly all the time. I remember once she had witnessed someone with underarm hair that she dances with, who is older than her but not much, and she said, Mom, why does that girl have underarm hair? And I said, well, all girls get underarm hair. And then I stopped myself and said, no, I don't. I don't get body hair because of my condition. So I said, you know what, honey, someday when you're a little older, you're actually going to get underarm hair. That's just your body changing. Mom's body actually doesn't do that because of what we've talked about, how mom is different. And that's why you came from Aunt Danny's belly. So it's been really therapeutic and good knowing I'm raising a child who understands there are biological differences, and that while she's growing up, it is perfectly normal to grow body hair and to get stinky and to get old, but not everybody's normal is going to look like that.
Why do you think it's important for you to be talking to other people about this, kind of for her sake?
1.7% of the population has an intersex condition because there are over 40 conditions you can have, but we don't really talk about it. 1.7% is about as common as having red hair or green eyes. That's pretty common for us to not be talking about it in school, to not learn about it in anatomy and in health class. When I was in health class in 9th grade, this was not spoke about. The only thing they hammered home is, you're normal. What you're going through is normal, but I wasn't going through any of that. So it was really confusing time for me. I think speaking about it, my hope is that health teachers and people in the community and educators hear me and realize she has this, someone in my class could have this. So the minor thing of just changing our language, this is a normal thing to happen to you, but it doesn't happen to everybody. Just that minor line, I know for me, would have been life-changing.
I guess, what do you want people to take away when they hear this story and all the things that you've been talking about?
I want people to understand that there is more to gender than XY and XX chromosomes. There is more to a person than what you see on the outside, and that you don't know everybody's story. And when you see me, I mean, from birth, you could have seen me swimming in the pool at my mom's house in only a swim diaper. I was a little girl, but little did you know I had a Y chromosome and internal testes. But I'm just like your daughter. And hopefully, if you're a person that maybe has strict views on gender and your beliefs on that, I'm hoping it opens people's eyes to all the different ways a child can be born. I like storytelling, and that's something I've always liked. I think that's what drew me to radio and television in the first place, and media. And I've always been good at long-form storytelling. I can sit and tell a story, and I've always known I've been good at that, but there's not a lot of outlets for it. I mean, being in news, they're like, 2 minutes. I can't tell you a story in 2 minutes. Give me 10, and I'm gonna tell you the best story you've ever heard. So TikTok, you can do up to 10-minute videos, and I found my 10-minute videos are what people want. They like my stories, and I like storytelling, and that's been the best form of therapy for me. So having these stories kind of blow up online and getting people's responses, that has been awesome. But the biggest thing I've gotten from it is my inbox. I have met, I'm gonna say upwards of 50, 60 individuals with my intersex condition. I've never met an individual that's not in my family with my condition in my whole life. So it's just insane to meet someone when I thought I would go all of my life feeling like a dinosaur. And now I have 50, 60, 70 new friends on TikTok who also have it and told me, I had the same thing. I had a doctor in Minneapolis. They told me not to tell anybody. I won Mrs. America, which is the largest Mrs. pageant, a pageant for married women in the country. It's been around since the 40s, and it got bought by the Marmel family in the 70s. They took it from a home ec competition,
Yeah.
and made it into a pageant. Essentially, the owners said, all right, there's this Mrs. America thing where women are getting judged on their cooking and cleaning skills. And there was literally a Mrs. Michigan, a Mrs. Minnesota, Mrs. Alaska that would come and compete in baking a pie, cleaning a kitchen, folding laundry. And then they'd have a Mrs. America, and they'd be sponsored by like dish soap. And they were like a celebrity for married women. And this family from New York said, we're gonna buy that, and we're gonna show that a married woman of any age from 18 up can be what Miss America can be. And they have talents and strengths and a voice. And took it from the 70s to where it is today. It was televised for a super long time. And it's held in Vegas each year at the Westgate where Elvis performed. And it was always a dream of mine to be Miss America when I was young, but I got married and that dream went away. So when I went on to Mrs. America as Mrs. Michigan, I kind of thought, oh, this is like my second chance. But nowhere in that second chance did I think I would actually win Mrs. America. There's 51 women. Every state is there, plus DC. So I thought, well, the odds of winning are 1 in 51. You're not gonna win. And so I went in and just had fun, and I told my intersex story as my platform. I made it to the top 15 and dropped what the heck, I'm top 15. So then fast forward to when they made the top 6, and I was top 6, and my jaw was on the floor. The footage was laughable because I was so like, are you kidding me? And when you get to the top 3, they ask you an onstage question. So I get called to the top 3, and now I'm like, bowl me over. And they asked me, if you had a lamp with a genie and you could get one wish, what would you make that wish be? And I thought, what a question. And I said, I wish that doctors understood how to talk to people with intersex conditions and didn't operate without informed consent. I explained my procedure as quickly as I could. You only get 60 seconds. And talked about being intersex. I ended up 10 minutes later being crowned Mrs. America, and I think it was the most validating thing in my life, at least at the time, because I was so afraid of people knowing, and then I just told this whole audience on this streamed platform on pay-per-view that I was born with testes, and they still crowned me Mrs. America.
I love that. And you do that with your daughter now too?
Yeah, so my daughter went on to do a pageant called National American Miss. It's the largest youth scholarship organization for pageants in the country. She won the Miss Michigan Princess through NAM. And the components of NAM are evening gown competition, but that's a very small percentage, and the rest are a 30-second personal introduction and an interview. So she worked really hard on public speaking and interview skills, and she went to their national competition in Orlando. At this point, it was very weird doing all this for her. So she did an optional competition they had called Spokesmodel, where you get 90 seconds to deliver a memorized speech. And I thought, she's 7. I don't know how this is gonna go. But she did a speech about coming from her Aunt Danny's belly. And she worked with a dialogue coach and talked to my sister a lot about the experience. And she gave a 90-second speech at 7 years old to an audience at a podium about how people don't understand that she can have a mom but came from a different belly, and won $800 in cash for winning the spokesmodel, and then went on to win National American Miss Princess and was crowned on the anniversary of the day I was crowned Mrs. America, out of sheer coincidence. So she did that, and then last year she was crowning her successor, where she got to go and crown the next princess, and they made a big announcement. National American Miss said, we decided that life doesn't stop at 25, and we're going to extend this to 39. And my daughter from the stage screamed, my mom can do it! And I went, what? Me? But then I said, no, I'll be 40. And they said, well, it goes by how old you are January 1 of that year. And I went, your girl could do it? So I said, why not? So I signed both of us up, and we're both going to National American Miss Michigan in Labor Day weekend coming up here. It's held in Indianapolis with 3 other states. Ohio competes, and Indiana competes, and Michigan competes. And I'm just gonna go for it. Keep spreading my message, and she's gonna spread her message. I think it'll be fun.